quickly respond to some of the questions that were directed to me. I will just say in general that yes, the project that we are trying to undertake as Charter Project Africa does take into consideration some of the challenges that were highlighted by one of the speakers with regards to the violations that happen online and the risks that digital activists are exposed to. And one of the things we hope to do is share community of practice on how best to mitigate those challenges. But also importantly, we have tools that we want to make freely available on how to practice activism safely online. Some digital tools that protect human rights defenders online, and that will be available on our platform. I encourage people to engage with. And that also, yes, experience sharing and skill sharing is also part of the inbuilt aspect of the project through facilitating a series of dialogues that we will hope to have eventually at the sub-regional level, where we can then take note of some of the themes emerging of democratic governance, and yes, some of the best practices that we can learn from each other. Now, in closing, what I will say is with regards to the theme of unconstitutional changes of government that brought us all together here, and listening to everything that's been said over the last sessions and plenaries, I think we need to acknowledge in some way or form our democratic governance conversation has broken down somewhere. And unconstitutional changes of government is a symptom of that breakdown. Now, the question is what we then do about it. Because I think one of the key factors that has stood out is even when my brother here was speaking about the different perceptions and surveys of the public, we are dealing with a scenario where public trust in governments is eroding fast, not in democracy. They trust democracy, they just don't trust the governments to deliver said democracy. And also, yes, civil society as well, as you now mentioned, falls into that space in terms of also being indicted in terms of what we are doing to restore that conversation and stem the breakdown of democratic governance. And so that's why I think it calls for a very strong multi-stakeholder effort. All of us who are concerned in this democratic governance conversation need to come together. We need to leverage our different strengths, our different initiatives, and work towards a common purpose, which should be to amplify the voices and facilitate the voices of the citizenry, not stand in their way. So again, the question of agency becomes very important, and I agree we can't, even as civil society organizations, constantly stand in for the voices of the public in a way that undermines their own speech. And that's why one of the things we try to push as our project around civic technology and digital engagement is also trying to acknowledge where these conversations happen. How are people organizing? So while I have pushed forward the agenda for civic technology and digital engagement as one of those ways and one of those spaces, it by no means is the only space for engagement. I think the important thrust should be, let us start acknowledging where people are organizing around these issues, where they're having their conversations around these issues. And if we are in a position to be facilitative, let our organizing question be how we shrink the spaces between the so-called powerful and the so-called powerless. If we work on that modality, we will then begin to see how we can reconstruct and put back on track the question of democratic governance on the continent and push back against the negative aspects we are beginning to see, such as unconstitutional changes in government. Thank you.